Hey, Living Faith. This is Pastor Alex, and I have a sermon huddle video for you today. The idea behind the sermon huddle is to just take a brief review of this past Sunday's sermon and give you some questions to think about, from food for thought. If you would like to interact with me through the comments or through email or through text, I'd love to hear from you what you're thinking as well. This past Sunday, we were in the second study of a series on Ecclesiastes. We'll do a total of 4 messages on Ecclesiastes. This past Sunday was the second, and we were in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 through 5, looking through that passage, trying to understand it. It says a lot about time, and the title of the message was "Time on Our Side?" As we think about the progress of time in our lives and how time affects us. It raises a lot of questions. So what I want to do is share with you an opening illustration that I had to begin the message, and then think with you a little bit about that. So here we go. Here's the way the sermon began on Sunday.
I heard it said once that imagine that you received a call from your local bank who informed you that a person who loves you really dearly, has decided to credit your account each morning with 86,400 pennies. That's $864 a day, by the way. Not too many of us would be too upset about that. But there's only one stipulation. Every day, 86,400 pennies would go into your account. There's only one stipulation. No balance is carried over from the previous day. You spend the entire amount that day, or it goes away. There's no overdraw. There's no carryover. You either spend it, or it's gone. Some of you are saying, doable. I could figure out a way to do that, right? The truth is, you and I have such a bank. You know what that name of that bank is? It's a time bank. Every one of us has been credited with 86,400 seconds. And there's no carryover. There's no do-over. There's no grabbing credit from yesterday to put to today or tomorrow. We have to spend all those 86,400 seconds in the best way we can.
So that is the challenge of time that we live in. How are we spending the 86,400 seconds that we have? Are we making the best use of it? And the writer of Ecclesiastes struggles with that concept as he thinks about the time that he has and the various seasons of life that he has. The writer of Ecclesiastes in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 talks about the various types of experiences of life that he has in the time that he has. He speaks about that in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse 1 through 8. He talks about life is this way: a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck what is planted, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. That's how our lives, as we experience time, often plays out with these contrasts of life. Sometimes the time that we have is filled with wonderful joy, and it's a time to embrace and a time to rejoice and to dance. And sometimes the experiences of our life are just the opposite. As we go through life, I also shared with you that we experience a progress of time, and Philip Needham expressed that so well when he said the 7 ages of man, I'll include women and children and everyone, is this: spills, drills, thrills, bills, ills, pills, and wills. Our life progresses and in some ways digresses, doesn't it, from the vitality of youth all the way through to our older age as God grants us that, and eventually it leads to trials and difficulties and hardships, doesn't it? So the question that we were asking on Sunday was how do we wrestle with the various time that God has given us, and how do we try and understand that? And as I shared with you on Sunday, there are perhaps three different ways in which people wrestle with their meaning in life and with the time that God has given them. I shared with you that how do we make sense out of the passage of time and what lies ahead? Some people will tragically conclude, with all this mess in the world, there must be no God. People look at life, they look at the suffering that they experience in this time of life that they've been granted, and they say there must be no God. Some will naively conclude, well, let's make a deal, God. I'll make a deal with you. I'll do this, you do that, and we try and make a deal with God. That's the essence of what religion is. But really, the writer of Ecclesiastes would call us to something very different than those two. He would call us to faithfully, full of faith, conclude, there's a lot I don't understand at all, but I choose to trust God and find my satisfaction in what He gives me. And that really is the essence of what Ecclesiastes is all about. How do we learn to trust God with the time that He's given us and find satisfaction in what He gives to us? It is ultimately an issue of faith, whether or not we would believe God and trust Him for the allotment of time that He has given to us. Is that how you look at your life? Do you look at your life as a gift given to you by God? The writer of Ecclesiastes concludes this way in chapter 5, verse 18. This is what I have observed to be good, that it is appropriate for a person to eat, to drink, and to find satisfaction in their toilsome labor under the sun during the few days of life God has given them, for this is their lot. Moreover, when God gives someone wealth and possessions and the ability to enjoy them, to accept their lot and be happy in their toil, this is the gift of God. They seldom reflect on the days of their life because God keeps them occupied with gladness of heart. The writer of Ecclesiastes is telling us what? We have to find satisfaction in our life and time that God has given us. We have to find the ability to enjoy the things that God has given us, and we have to learn to be happy and find a gladness of heart. But notice that this is a gift of God. God gives us these things. God has given them this. And so we have to learn to understand what God has given us in this season and time of life that we have and the allotment of life that He gives to each one of us, and learn to enjoy that. And that is, in fact, a gift of God. So I want to encourage you, as you think about the time and seasons of life that God has given you, are you looking at it as a gift from God and seeking Him to learn to enjoy it and to be a good steward of it with the time that God has given you? I hope that's what you're striving to do. I know that's what I'm striving to do. Some days I'm better than others when it comes to finding satisfaction and enjoyment with the life that God has given me, learning not to complain, but learning to look to Him for trust. And I pray and hope that that's what God is teaching you this week as well. So God bless you as you seek to honor Him with the gift of time that He has given to you. God bless you and good evening.